Last year, one driver brought his vehicle into a repair shop because of a harsh grinding sound. Only 14 months earlier, the car had received a complete brake replacement, but now the inner brake pads had worn completely down to bare metal. The outer pads still showed almost half of their remaining life. The shop explained that the car now needed fresh brake pads, replacement rotors, because excessive heat had warped them, and likely a new caliper as well. The estimate came to $800. Those pads should have survived for 4 years. Instead, they failed after only 14 months. The issue was not the brake pads themselves. It was not caused by driving habits either. The real cause was 2 steel guide pins, each about the size of an index finger, that had never been lubricated during installation. A single dollar worth of grease, less than 60 seconds of labor. That small procedure was skipped, and the pads were effectively ruined from the moment they were installed. A brake industry training document identifies this exact situation as the #1 cause of premature brake pad failure. Not aggressive braking, not low-quality components. A missed procedure that requires less than 1 minute. Most people imagine brakes working like a fist, squeezing evenly from both sides. 2 pads clamp onto a rotor at the same moment with equal pressure. That is the intended design. But it is not how the mechanism actually operates. A brake caliper contains only 1 piston, just one. When the driver presses the brake pedal, hydraulic force pushes that piston outward, driving the inner pad directly into the rotor. That only completes half the process. For the outer pad to touch the rotor, the entire caliper housing must move inward. The caliper has to float across its mounting points. As it slides, it pulls the outer pad against the opposite side of the rotor. 2 steel pins make this movement possible. Each pin sits inside a bore within the caliper bracket. The caliper glides along those pins the same way a drawer moves on rails. If the pin slides smoothly, the caliper floats correctly. Both brake pads press evenly and the system functions as designed. Those pins are protected by rubber boots and coated with a thin layer of silicone grease. The lubricant allows smooth movement. The rubber seals block out water, brake dust, and road salt. That entire balance depends on 2 pins, 2 rubber boots, and a coating of grease thinner than paint. A $400 brake service is only as reliable as that coating remains intact. Then the breakdown begins. In climates with road salt, moisture, or major temperature swings, factory grease slowly deteriorates, which means nearly everywhere. Within 2 to 3 years, that lubricant begins losing effectiveness. Heat cycles crack the rubber boots, moisture enters the bore, and corrosion forms on the steel pins. Movement becomes restricted. The caliper no longer floats freely. From that point on, the brake pads are already counting down toward failure. The first stage is uneven wear. The inner brake pad, pushed directly by the piston, handles nearly all the braking force. The outer pad barely contacts the rotor because the caliper cannot slide inward enough to pull it into position. Most drivers never notice it happening. There is no dashboard warning, no error code, no unusual sound at first. One pad simply grinds itself away while the other still appears almost new. A user on the Bob is the Oil Guy forum, one of the largest independent oil analysis communities online, uploaded photos showing this exact condition. Brake pads with only 6,000 miles of use. The inner pads completely destroyed. The outer pads still usable. The previous brake technician had failed to grease the caliper pins. 6,000 miles on pads that should have lasted 40,000. That is not rare. The same pattern appears repeatedly across hundreds of forum discussions, involving nearly every make and model. Then comes stage 2, heat. When a caliper pin cannot move correctly, the brake pad continues dragging against the rotor, even after the driver removes pressure from the pedal. The drag is too small to feel directly, but strong enough to create heat every time the wheel rotates. That continuous friction warps the rotor. Now the driver notices symptoms. A pulsing sensation develops in the brake pedal or steering wheel during slowing. The diagnosis becomes warped rotors, and the rotors are warped. But they were not the original problem. The seized pins overheated them. While the pad keeps dragging, the engine must fight against a brake that never fully releases. Fuel economy drops because the vehicle is constantly overcoming unnecessary friction. And eventually, the issue stops being only about money. When one caliper drags harder than the other side, the vehicle no longer stops in a straight line. During hard braking, the kind that happens in an emergency, the vehicle pulls toward the side, gripping harder than the other. Stopping distance increases because one half of the braking system is no longer working correctly. This is not just maintenance trouble. It is a safety issue disguised as routine wear, and almost nobody tells drivers about it. Then comes stage 3, caliper failure. The same heat that distorted the rotors also damages the rubber boots, sealing the guide pin bores. Once those boots split open, water from puddles, road salt, and grime begin entering the bore and attacking the steel surface of the pins. Corrosion takes control. At that point, the pin no longer merely sticks. It locks itself into the bore completely. One user on the Ford Truck Enthusiast forum described a seized pin during an elk hunting trip. The pin was stuck so tightly that it snapped apart when he attempted to remove it using a pipe wrench. A Duramax owner on a diesel forum documented replacing 3 rear brake calipers on his 2013 truck because every lower guide pin had seized into the caliper housing itself. Not jammed, bonded solid. The caliper becomes useless scrap metal. Then comes stage 4, the part that should make people furious. The repair shop installs new pads, fresh rotors, and another caliper. The cost ranges from $600 to $1,000 per axle. Most replacement calipers are remanufactured units. They arrive with only a light layer of factory grease already applied to the pins. If the same shop handles the installation the same way they handled the previous brake service, and most do because the same technicians work at the same pace, the entire cycle starts again immediately. The moment the car leaves the shop, the customer is no longer purchasing brake pads once. They're effectively signing up for endless brake jobs. The pin responsible for the problem costs only $3 to replace. The grease that could keep it functioning costs less than $1 each time it is applied. But the brake service that ignored both ends up costing $800 while lasting barely half the expected lifespan. So why does this continue happening? A brake industry training publication called Tomorrow's Technician released a list covering the 10 most common mistakes made during brake service. The first item involved cleaning caliper bracket slides. The second involved lubricating guide pins. Their own wording states that neglecting guide pin service is the leading reason for uneven brake pad wear. The 2 most common brake service mistakes across the entire industry are both simple cleaning and lubrication procedures that require only 5 extra minutes and produce no additional parts revenue. Wagner Brakes, a company that manufactures brake pads, publishes technical service bulletins directing shops to clean and lubricate every caliper bracket and guide pin during each brake replacement. Their documentation specifically identifies failure to perform that service as a major cause of brake noise, early pad wear, and longer stopping distances. The manufacturer itself is explaining how to make the pads last longer. Many shops still skip the procedure, and this is the part that should genuinely bother drivers. Some brake pad kits already include a small packet of caliper pin grease inside the package. It comes directly in the box with the pads, because the manufacturer already knows the pins must be lubricated during installation. Yet the technician opens the package, removes the pads, and either throws the grease packet away or never notices it at all. The product needed to prevent the problem is literally included inside the box. It still never gets used. This is not some organized conspiracy. Nobody planned it. The economics simply work against the customer. Flat rate brake work pays technicians a fixed amount of time no matter how long the job actually takes. Removing both pins, cleaning the bores, inspecting the rubber boots, applying fresh lubricant, then putting everything back together adds another 5 to 10 minutes per axle. For a technician racing against the clock, those minutes come directly out of personal income. The process creates no extra part sale, no separate invoice line, no additional labor charge, but the failures caused by skipping it generate another complete brake job costing $400 to $800. Then a seized caliper adds another $300 to $500 more. The preventative step earns the shop nothing. The breakdown it creates earns them everything. Most shops are not skipping the process because they want to hurt customers. They skip it because the flat rate system does not reward prevention, while the resulting failures generate future business on their own. So here's how to inspect your own vehicle tonight. No tools required. Because if your last brake service skipped this procedure, the damage may already be developing. Drive normally for 15 to 20 minutes, then park the vehicle and carefully place your hand 4 to 6 inches from each wheel. Do not touch the wheel directly, it will be hot. A sticking caliper makes one wheel run far hotter than the others. If you own a $15 infrared thermometer from Amazon or Harbor Freight, point it through the wheel spokes at each rotor. The temperature difference of 50 to 100 degrees between the left and right side of the same axle means one caliper is dragging. There's another way to spot it. Look closely at the wheels. If one front wheel is covered in thick black brake dust while the other stays relatively clean, the dirty side is dragging. The brake pad remains pressed against the rotor all the time, slowly grinding away friction material with every wheel rotation. Same vehicle, same driver, same roads. Yet one wheel appears like it just came out of a coal mine. Third check. If the rotor surface is visible through the spokes, examine the metal carefully. A normal rotor has an even gray appearance. A rotor overheated by a dragging caliper develops blue or purple discoloration. Those marks are heat stains created by temperatures the rotor was never designed to endure. If one rotor carries those stains while the other does not, the damage from a seized pin has already started. If you drive a Toyota Camry, a Honda Accord, a Honda Civic, a Toyota Corolla, a Toyota RAV4, a Honda CR-V, a Subaru Forester, a Subaru Outback, a Nissan Altima, or a Nissan Sentra, your vehicle uses slide pins. In reality, almost every car sold during the last 20 years has front disc brakes at minimum. That means almost every one of them depends on slide pins. This is not isolated to one brand or one model. It affects nearly every disc brake system on the road. Now comes the important part, because this is where trust matters. The lubricant matters too, and using the wrong grease is honestly worse than using none at all. Standard lithium grease, chassis grease, and petroleum-based lubricants cause the rubber boots to swell. Once swollen, the boots trap the guide pin inside the bore. This has been documented repeatedly. Owners of the Subaru Forester, Kia Forte, and various BMW 3 Series models have all reported seized pins caused by rubber boots expanding after incorrect grease was used. The shop selected lubricant from the wrong tube and created the same problem the grease was supposed to stop. The correct product is silicone-based brake caliper lubricant that is safe for rubber components. Silglide costs between $8 and $12 per tube at nearly every parts counter. One tube lasts for years. Only a pea-sized amount is needed for each pin. 2 pins per caliper, 2 front calipers on every vehicle, plus 2 rear calipers if the car uses rear disc brakes. The actual cost per application stays below $1. When should it be done? Every single time brake pads are installed. Every time. If you service your own brakes, remove the pins first. They should move freely using finger pressure alone. If they do not, you already found the problem. Clean the pins using brake cleaner. Inspect the rubber boots for cracks or swelling. Apply a thin layer of silicone grease onto the pin and inside the bore. Reinstall them carefully. The lubricant should appear clear or translucent. The pin should move as smoothly as if sliding on ice. 60 seconds for each pin. That is what properly serviced brakes look like. If you pay a shop to handle the work, ask one question before they begin. Ask them directly, are you servicing the caliper slide pins? If the technician hesitates or gives a confused look, you already understand more about the brake job than expected. There's one honest limitation. If the pins are already deeply pitted, corroded, rough to the touch, or covered in visible rust scoring, grease will not save them anymore. Replace them. A hardware kit containing fresh pins and new rubber boots costs around $10 to $15 at AutoZone or Napa Auto Parts. That is the $15 repair instead of a $300 caliper replacement. But if the damage continues long enough for the bore inside the bracket to become scored, then the entire bracket must be replaced too. And suddenly, the repair returns to the $600 job that $1 worth of grease could have prevented 3 years earlier. Grease cannot revive destroyed pins. It only keeps healthy pins alive. Prevention is the only solution. Brake pad manufacturers already published the instructions. Training publications already rank lubrication and cleaning as the number 1 and number 2 mistakes made during brake service. The grease already sits on shelves at parts counters across the country. Some manufacturers even place the packet directly inside the brake pad box. And still, flat rate brake jobs across America continue skipping the procedure because 5 minutes of prevention never appears as a billable line on the invoice. Brake pads should last 40,000 to 50,000 miles. If yours are wearing out after 15,000 or 20,000 miles, the pads were never the actual issue. The brake service itself caused the failure. Next time brake pads are installed, whether on your vehicle or someone else's, remember this: 60 seconds for each pin, $1 worth of grease. That is the difference between brake pads that survive for years and brake pads already dying the moment they were installed. If this information helped you, pass it along to someone before their next brake job turns into another expensive repair. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.